This is a follow-up video. We previously watched this video here by Legendary Drops. No, Blizzard, the Diablo 4 expansion isn't worth $100, where he breaks down the competition that Diablo 4 has going into 2024. We have things like Last Epoch, we have things like Path of Exile 2. But in today's video, he actually did a follow-up here saying, so I was wrong about the Diablo 4 expansion. Now I talked to this guy, he enjoys the reaction, so I thought it'd be fun. Why don't we watch the follow-up to this and see exactly what he's got to say? And particularly because I don't actually think he was that wrong. So maybe I'm getting roped in a little bit by the title, but we're going to find out. As is tradition, you will have links to the original video in case you wish to watch it without my commentary first, but let's go ahead and get right into it.
Admit when I'm wrong, albeit it doesn't happen all that often, but when it does, okay, I can admit that I'm wrong. I'll give you guys an example. About a year ago, one of the third or fourth videos I ever made on this channel was called Diablo 4 Isn't What You Think It Is. Got over 250,000 views. It was one of the fastest videos I'd ever seen pop off on my channel. And for anybody that's watching this that has a YouTube channel, they know how crazy it is for the third or fourth video of yours to get that many views that quickly.
Yeah, that kind of happened on this channel. This was a brand new channel with Diablo 4 coming out, and it kind of had this scale there, which it is a very, I want to say, weird feeling. Like, it feels good, but you're also like, oh shit, like what's happening? So I know what he means.
And in that video, I simped for Diablo 4.
We all did.
I said things like, guys, don't worry about it. The cash shop is just there to fund the further development of the game so it can be even better over time.
Okay, well, to be fair, I don't think the cash shop is like the biggest problem with Diablo 4. All right, I'm sure we're going to get into it, but I think that a lot of the cash shop drama has been fairly overblown, if I'm just being honest. Like the $65 horse and stuff, it wasn't a $65 horse. It was a horse skin that came with $65 worth of currency. The cosmetics, for me, have never altered the game experience. I see comments and videos like these. I was literally reading comments this morning, and one of them said, like, the reason I don't like the cash shop is they take power out of the game and put it in the cash shop, so you have to buy it instead, which is literally just, like, factually not even in the game. So sometimes I feel like the cash shop stuff is not really as big of a deal as people make it out to be.
Look, we all have our moments of weakness. I learned from mine. So I was really surprised to see that when I put out my last video about how Diablo 4, an expansion for the game, wouldn't be worth $100, I wasn't expecting such an outcry from people that, well, while many did agree with me, there were a lot that didn't.
Okay, this is true. There is a lot of what I would consider Diablo-only players. In fact, in my Discord, I was reading a conversation where people were arguing between Path of Exile and Diablo. I have before said in videos that it is a competition in terms of company to company, but it doesn't have to be competition from the player to player level. Like, if you like Diablo, that's good. Like, I'm happy for you. I don't see any world that exists in which other people need to be sad that somebody likes Diablo. We don't all have to be exactly in the same boat. In fact, I like Diablo a lot longer than a lot of the hardcore grinders because they got to the point before I did where I was kind of casual, Andy, ho-hum, having a good time. And then I got along into the game and got to the point of the game where I was like, okay, now I'm bored. And I moved on and started playing Path of Exile, right? Like, I don't think you necessarily have to all agree at the same point whether or not you can enjoy the game. It's obvious you can enjoy Diablo. Like, it is possible to enjoy Diablo. So I know where he's going with this.
He even called me a liar. So today, what I want to do is I actually want to focus in on some of those discussions because I think it's worth having. Because I may not change the hearts and minds of everybody, but if I can change the hearts and minds of a few, well, then maybe we can get better games as a result in years to come.
I sure hope so, but
we're going to listen to the people that disagree with me today, and we're going to see if they can change my mind.
Okay, you're not going to change your...
Can't.
Yeah, you're not going to...
Common complaint that I saw is how unfair and disingenuous it was for me to compare Diablo 4 to Path of Exile, as Path of Exile has had 10 years of content to improve upon itself.
I'll be honest, I hate this argument. Diablo 4 has had 10 years of being fucking developed. Like, I actually hate this argument. People be like, the Diablo 4 just came out. I know it's been out 10 years. I myself have said it, but it's like, it's not a good argument. It's like, the reality is I could flip that and be like, yeah, it's a 10-year-old game. and it has more content in the game that's coming out in 2023. And then people will just say, well, it came out 10 years ago, so it's going to have more content. By that logic, every game that's older should have more content than any game that's ever released. It doesn't work that way. They've been building Diablo 4 for forever, for literally forever. That Diablo 3 is what, 28 seasons? You had 28 seasons of Diablo 3 to make Diablo 4, the next iteration of the game. The Path of Exile got released at the same time as D3. The concept is you would think they'd be working on the next one while D3 is out there also, but I don't like this argument personally. The whole like Path of Exile has been out 10 years thing. I don't think that's a good argument.
And continue to add things over time where Diablo 4 has only been out for less than a year. And from their perspective, this is true. Path of Exile has had over 30 leagues, each bringing new items, systems, content expansions, bosses, monsters, and various
really
improvements
30 leagues?
to the game over the span of its 10-year reign. Some leagues are more successful than others. Some content is kept for the long haul, and other content is removed because players just didn't enjoy it. 10 years is a long time to improve upon your systems, engage with players, and implement the feedback and data that you've learned into the development of the game. While Path of Exile isn't a game for everyone, it is the game for the players that enjoy it because of...
That is such a perfect point. Diablo is a good game for people like getting into the genre, but the people that are super hardcore, like extremely passionate about ARPGs, Diablo 4 tends to not be as satisfactory because they're going to gobble up the content so quickly, and then they need more and more and more, which kind of turns them from like passionate enjoyers of the game to like complainers, basically, or people that are sending feedback, if you want to say it nicely. Whereas Path of Exile, you get more and more and more and more and more into it. And again, they don't have to be a competition between each other, but for this type of player, the one he's mentioning here is like, for the people that enjoy it, it's the game. That is a very astute point.
How well Path of Exile has handled its continued development and its monetization. So yes, this complaint is actually true. They are right. I am wrong in this from a very narrow perspective. A less than a year-old Diablo 4 versus a 10-year-old Path of Exile is an unfair comparison in a world without context. But we don't live in a world without context.
Okay, here we go.
In this matter,
I was going to say, I don't give up this point, dude. Like, it is a bad argument when the games are both out in 2023. You as a human have limited time to stay alive. They're both competing against each other at the moment, even though the players don't have to be. I think they're separate points, but in the company's game, they're trying to grab the player's attention. You only have so many hours in your day. The one that you think is the better game is the one that you're going to pick. So I don't think that he has to give up his point here. I think he was right in his original video.
Context is king. The Diablo series spawned the loot-driven subgenre within ARPGs, aspiring numerous titles to emulate its formula, including Path of Exile. The game's focus on character progression, loot collection, and real-time combat had become a standard in the genre. Diablo was released almost 3 decades ago in 1996, captivating players with its immersive storytelling, randomized dungeon layouts, and loot-driven gameplay. Diablo 2, released in 2000, expanded upon its predecessor's formula, offering more complex character customization, a larger world, and an enhanced storyline. Diablo 2 is often credited with defining the modern ARPG genre, introducing elements like skill trees and a robust multiplayer experience.
Little known fact, we actually did a playthrough of Diablo 2, and I posted it to the OG channel. If you haven't seen that one, I very often link up to the OG channel after these videos. And that Diablo 2 experience after going to Path of Exile made me realize that Path of Exile is much more like Diablo 2 than it is like any of the other Diablos, specifically because of the way the items work, like +1 ranks to everything. The affixes, as I suppose they're known in Diablo, seem much more like Path of Exile. And the items are why I like Path of Exile so much anyway. I know I've done like a meme video about it, etc., but the reality is the items are so good. So I can see why people that like Diablo 2 ended up liking Path of Exile, and the people that like Diablo 3 maybe like Diablo 4 a little bit more.
Then we have Diablo 3 in 2012 and Diablo 4 in 2023. Almost 3 decades of games, 3 decades of iterations, opportunities for improvement, innovation, and expansion. On the other hand, we have Path of Exile, which is Grinding Gear Games' first game. The company was founded in 2006. Blizzard Entertainment has been making games and expansions since 1994. We could go even further back if you'd like to its days as Silicon and Synapse, and we have an over 30-year-old game studio. Heck, even if we just look at the development cycle for Diablo 4, over 10 years since the release of Diablo 3, Blizzard has had every opportunity to improve upon its initial formula and steal some of the best parts from its competitors' games. So now with context, I propose this question. What do we have for now almost 30 years of Diablo? For a 10-year development cycle for Diablo 4, we got a decent feeling RPG that looked really good. It had awesome looking cutscenes. Story was pretty decent.
This is all stuff that I'm glad he's mentioning, because sometimes in these like D4 bad type of videos, people don't give credit where credit is due. And that's something I try pretty hard in my commentary videos, is that Diablo 4 did some things extremely well, in my own personal opinion. It is not just all bad, and there's no in-game and there's no items, and it's not all that. Like, the cutscenes were basically some of the best cutscenes. The campaign was very good. It's very easy to understand. It's easy to get into. The beginning to middle of the game was pretty good. Needs some in-game, needs itemization changes, but the early and mid-game are actually quite solid. So I'm glad he's giving it the credit that it is due, to be fair.
No loot filters, brain-dead boss design.
Oh, here we go.
Loot,
Never mind.
No endgame variety, and a now deserted open-world MMO light.
Okay, well, that was short-lived, but yeah, it's hard to argue that.
Is it wrong of me to expect more of a $70 billion studio? Is it wrong of me to expect more, or is it unfair of me to compare when the studio we're talking about is the grandfather of the genre itself? No, it's not. It's not unfair to compare Path of Exile to Diablo 4. And that's not me saying that Diablo 4 needs to be like Path of Exile. It's far from that. I realize that Diablo 4 is a game that's supposed to appeal to a much wider audience, a much more casual audience than Path of Exile.
Agreed.
But without that complexity and depth, that doesn't mean that Diablo 4 needed to be a game that lacked any innovation, imagination, or improvement. But
and he's pretty harsh on it. It's hard to argue these points because it's happening to everybody. Like, there's only a few content creators left really covering Diablo 4 on a given basis. You can pick any Path of Exile streamer, and they will basically have larger numbers on Twitch than the entirety of Diablo 4 on Twitch combined, which, again, I've also said myself, Twitch is not a good way to compare numbers, but I'm just looking at the stuff that I see as a content creator. Okay. That seems unfortunate, so it's kind of hard to argue against that. I still want to mention the point where if you are a Diablo 4 enjoyer, that does not mean that you're wrong to enjoy the game. And it does not mean that Diablo players have to go play Path of Exile. I've seen this in comments sometimes that I actually agree with, where people are like, look, I think Path of Exile is a great game, but I'm enjoying Diablo 4. I don't get to play as much as the people that are doing the commentary on it. I'm still working my way through the game. I'm sure I'll go to Path of Exile at some time, and I don't like this concept where people are like, Path of Exile is the GOAT, you have to play it or you're just dumb, which is a very fair point, and honestly kind of what I try to avoid in it. Like, Path of Exile is a great game, and in my opinion, if you just love the RPG genres, you absolutely have to try it at some point, but you shouldn't feel bad or dumb for playing Diablo 4. Like, it gets memed on so hard sometimes. But it's still a game that you can play and enjoy with the time in it. If you're going to spend thousands and thousands of hours, you're probably eventually going to move on just by happenstance of how the game is designed. But it doesn't mean that during the time when you're playing it, you're wrong to have been enjoying it. I just want to kind of like throw that out there, because I do see these comments of people that feel like they're getting left behind, where it's like, I don't get it. We are all loving playing Diablo. I'm still loving playing Diablo, and now everyone's shoving PoE down my throat, etc. Because everyone's going to play that and talking about how it's the greatest. Like, you're not wrong to feel that way. I just want to throw that out there. Keep going here.
That's exactly what we got. That's the reason why I'm upset, and many other players are upset too, is because it should still be more than what it is. That's not to say that the game won't get better over time, but that still doesn't justify us spending more money until they get that game to what it should be.
That's true.
And it still lacks that something that wants to make you keep coming back to it. Another common complaint that I saw is that I said nothing about Diablo 4 and how it's improved since Season 2. Now, in the video, I did mention that some improvements have been made to the game, especially in the Season of Blood. However, the uptick in player engagement was relatively negligible.
And, both things can be true. Like, the game can and is, in my opinion at least, factually better than it was on launch, and people can and are still getting bored of it. and going to play other things. Part of this is just the season cycle. Look, January 23, the next season, this one ends, and I think the next season comes out the same day or maybe the next day or something. I don't know. We don't think we have the exact date on that yet. Maybe we do. Maybe I'm just missing it, okay? But here in the end of January, the new season comes, and I and everyone else in the RPG space will definitely try Season 3 to see what it's like. And then if it's good, they'll stay. If it's not good, they'll move on. You know, that's just kind of like both things can be true. The game can be getting better and still not be good enough. You know, like when you know what I mean?
So let's go ahead and look at those improvements. New players can now skip the campaign and jump right into Season 2. Previously, players had to complete the campaign at least once to even join into a seasonal realm. All renown now carries over to new characters and seasons. Previously, we still had to go out and do renown activities
these
to
are quality
build
of
that
life
stuff back up and get.
I just want to point out, so far, these are only quality of life changes, or the majority of it, removing the things that make people want to quit the game as opposed to adding things that make people want to log into the game. These are fundamentally different things.
Some of those character buffs and extra skill points. Gems no longer take up inventory space, and
again, quality of life
is automatically salvaged, freeing up inventory space and easing some of the pains of lack of storage. New bosses have been added to the game throughout the seasons.
That is new
Target
content.
farming uniques has been added to the game,
that
giving players
content.
the opportunity to potentially find some build-defining items that were previously randomly found and couldn't be found just about anywhere. And they also improved XP gains by up to 40%. Now, while I think these are great improvements, I want to communicate my frustration that many of this stuff wasn't in Diablo 4 when it first released. And on top of that, many of the innovations that we've seen across the genre over the course of Diablo 3's release up until Diablo 4, we still don't see any of that. Crafting, trading, interesting itemization, cross-class builds and subclasses. At launch,
this
Diablo
is the part
4 didn't even have boss-specific, non-cosmetic chase items.
This is the part that he's getting into here that was a little confusing to me. Diablo 4 felt graphically superior. The combat felt more impactful, like slower, more methodical, better campaign in my opinion. But I played a lot of Diablo 3. I have it on the Switch, the Xbox, the PlayStation, and the PC. Okay? And in my time playing that, there are things that I missed about it. Crafting being one of them. I actually did craft items. You know, that part seemed weird. That when you go into Diablo 4, there's actually less things. And I don't really like the logic of, okay, well, Diablo 3 had 10 years to build that too. It's like, well, great. So then does Diablo 4 take 20 years to produce? Because it's been being built for 10, and then you put it out there and, oh, it's launched, but not really. Wait 10 years, and then you have it. Like, I don't like that logic either. So it's like, I get fed that as the answer when I complain about this stuff, which is like, oh, but damn, it's getting better. It's like, yeah, it's getting better, but it also took fucking forever to come out. And now that it's out, you want the game. Like, I didn't pre-order an early access. I bought a game. So, you know, yes, it's getting better. Yes, it's awesome that it's coming, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But like crafting taking, you know, a year or two after the game's out, it's like, it's obviously going to kill retention. So that's just one point that kind of comes back to my head.
Any loot could be obtained anywhere. There was no reason to even fight bosses in the first place, other than to just progress the story or go for achievement. A company with as many resources and experience as Blizzard couldn't effectively make interesting boss designs, blending colors with attacks to make the environment where you couldn't even know what you were being hit by.
I have a somewhat different experience, and just to be fair to my experience of the game, I actually rather enjoyed Lilith. I did it with Bone Spear, to be fair. However, my Bone Spear damage was bad. I actually had to do the mechanics, dodge the waves, do the phases. Okay, the only thing I didn't have to do was wait for the low skulls to float around right at the end of it. All right, and in my experience, it took me, I think it was like 11 hours, 13 hours, somewhere around there to beat the dang thing, did it on live stream, and that was some of my most enjoyable time in the game. I actually really liked the boss fight if you're not immediately one-shot it. Now I can walk in with Hold the Barb, kill it in 2 seconds, carry anyone that wants it. It's just dead immediately, which is unfortunate. But back when it actually launched, I actually quite liked this fight. This fight got a lot of shit, but I actually thought it was a pretty good fight. And in PoE, the bosses are great, since we're using the PoE comparison. The bosses are great. But a lot of people say that all of the Path of Exile bosses are like vastly superior to Lilith, which isn't actually true, in my opinion. Some of the bosses are cheesy bullshit one-hit mechanics that you just need to learn that are as annoying, okay? So I kind of like, I feel like Lilith gets a little bit more hate than it deserves. I will add on to one point, though, is that it is a little weird that the Lilith boss fight doesn't have voice lines. I noticed this in the campaign. When I was defeating her, I don't know if I bugged or something, but she didn't say a single word during the whole. I just killed her, and it was just like, it's over, which seemed weird for me. I feel like you need like a climactic finale, but you don't really get that. And when you kill her, it's a little lackluster when you do the Uber challenge too. Like you need. There should be some kind of like some dopamine associated around with beating this challenge. Now it doesn't matter because everyone just kills her in a half a second. But back then,
ended up just getting filtered by their art. So yes, Diablo 4 has definitely improved over time, massively so. And I realize that there's people that want me to recognize that because they enjoy Diablo 4 as it is right now, and they're looking forward to the future of the game.
That's what I was saying earlier.
They don't want me to just gloss over the fact that they have updated and fixed things over the course of the game's launch. However, the thing is that many of those improvements are common improvements that have existed in the industry since the development of Diablo 4. So none of that justifies me or many other people spending $50 to $100 on an expansion for the game. It doesn't even justify me spending money on any expansion regardless of whatever the price is.
Yeah, because basically everything that's coming in the expansion needs to be massively new content, or else it should have been included with the original price tag. I've said this so many times, I'm blue in the face saying it, but I don't think spending money on an expansion to basically add in the content the game should have had anyway is going to be well received by the consumer. However, the counterpoint to my point there is this isn't being launched until late 2024. We're putting the cart way before the horse. We have Season 3 with the leaderboards. We have Season 4 with itemization changes, they said, and those are both happening before expansion and for free. So the concept is, hey, by then, hopefully, and I say hopefully because who knows, we're going to have major changes to the game, specifically the crafting, itemization, and things like that. That's what I would love to see personally. And then maybe that makes it where the game is good enough that people will be interested in purchasing the expansion. And I will say freely that if the content that is delivered in Season 3 and Season 4 is really good, and I'm impressed. Like Season 2 was good for early game and good for mid game, okay? Season 3 needs to be good for competition. Season 4 needs to be good for itemization. And really, itemization should come before the competition. But this is just the cadence that we're stuck at. If they are all delivering well enough, I don't think paying for an expansion is beyond crazy reason. If it's like a $40 expansion or something like that, it's really going to be about the highest end of what I would think would be fair pricing for an expansion. If the game has been completely solved, more content, and we're at a good base game, I don't think selling expansions is a big deal. They did this in Diablo 3. I liked Reaper of the Souls. I don't know how other people felt about it. I wasn't really into the ARPG community at the time. I was just playing the game as a normie, whatever you want to call it. I was just buying games and playing them, and I bought Reaper of the Souls, and I enjoyed it. So I could see me doing that again with Diablo 4. I don't really have a whole bunch of anger around the expansion thing. If they sell an expansion, so be it. I just want the base game to be worth it, is all.
And I think this is a common issue that we see in gaming a lot. Gamers, every time that the studios start doing something that we want them to, start listening to us, even just for a minute, we start opening our wallets back up. And then the minute we do, the problems start all over again. Our reward to them for doing the right things is by us playing their game. Because if we're playing their game, it's popular. If it's popular, there's more people that are buying it. There's more people that are probably interacting with their microtransaction systems and all of that other stuff. We don't need to spend money for them to improve games. And that's something that we've been doing for far too long, and it needs to stop. Now, the last thing that I want to tackle are sentiments that were shared by both Riker and Asmongold, and this has to do with the complexity and depth of Diablo 4 and how it doesn't really need to position itself as a competitor because it doesn't have the same target audience. Diablo 4 is meant to be a more casual game than PoE. And the way that I worded my arguments about that, well, kind of left me open to this, so I want to clarify.
Okay, before he clarifies, I'll just say my point on this, and then we'll go after his clarification, is that I do think they have different target audiences. I've said this myself. However, if Diablo wishes to really compete with itself, basically be like the Diablo that people want to play, then it needs to have enough patterns in there that keep people in the game. The problem is that when the seasons come out, people will play it. As the seasons go on, they get bored and then leave quicker than other games, okay? And if it's only really competing within itself, then what it needs to do is keep the spiral long enough where people are going to stay. And I think that really comes from itemization. So I really think that's a season 4 solvable issue, but let's see what his clarification is here.
Path of Exile is far too complex and complicated for the layman and honestly even veterans of the genre. I just recently started playing the game in earnest with its last season, and while I've enjoyed myself, I cannot play the game without having done significant research and having max roll opened up on my other monitor.
Okay, that's all fair. There is one other point, though, which is that, you know, there is a world in which people play both games. Like, there's the Path of Exile only and the Diablo only players. But there are people like me that when the new season of each one comes out, they're going to play that season until they get bored. I will play Path of Exile this league until I get bored of the Affliction League. I will go do something else. It's exactly what I did with Diablo, and it's what I'll do with basically any game. I'll play it till I get bored, and that's pretty normal. That's pretty standard for gamers. So in the ARPG genre, maybe they're not competing against each other in terms of like which one's going to win overall in the next 5 years, but they are competing with each other in how long each person is willing to give each of the seasons. Like if Diablo 4 launches a season for 3 weeks, and then after the end of that 3 weeks, Path of Exile has got a season, Diablo 4 needs to have that 4th and 5th week still be really entertaining to not lose the people that are going back and forth with kind of the flavor of the month type of thing, you know? So they don't really have to compete against each other, but they have to be good enough to hold attention span. It's kind of where I keep coming back with this point.
The game has so many separate endgame systems that you genuinely cannot tell at first glance which is going to be the most rewarding or even enjoyable to engage with.
It's complicated, no doubt.
The game feels like it has countless ways to level, gear, and progress through the game, and some of the most complex skill and talent systems that I don't think I've seen anywhere else. Path of Exile isn't just a learning curve. It's a learning mountain that once you get to the top, somebody just pushes you off. When I brought up the value proposition between Diablo 4 and Path of Exile, what I was trying to really show off was the comparing and contrasting of meaningful progression. Diablo 4 lacks it completely. Personally, this is my opinion, but when I look at Diablo 4, I see Nightmare Dungeons basically being the exact same thing as Greater Rifts.
Yeah.
I look at the Tree of Whispers as basically just a reimagined version of the adventure mode.
Yeah,
and the open world lacks really any thoughtful design whatsoever.
That's maybe a little harsh. I think the layout of the open world is okay. I think the problem is the content chose to be ham-fisted in there, like Hell Tides. You know, Hell Tides aren't fun to do innately, but you put things in Hell Tides that you need in order to do the thing you want to do, which is bossing. So let's go farm Hell Tides, for instance. So, he's right about the open world. It feels a little bland, but it's not because of the design of the open world. And the reason I push back about this point is I believe very firmly, and you can call it copium if you want, but I believe that within Blizzard, there is a scope of very talented artists. And I'm going to say artists, sound design, cinematic creators, and those people probably spend a lot of time and love into making the world look good. And I think it does look good. I think the problem is like I say, the content within the world. So I really actually don't want to shit on the world and be like, the world is open and bland and terrible, because I actually don't think it is. I think the artists actually did quite good. I think the art in Diablo is one of the best part. They wanted it to be darker. It is darker. The layout's okay. The horse was annoying to move around it, but that wasn't the world's fault. And so for me, I'll push back on this point. I think the world is actually well designed, well laid out, and artistically looks very good. However, I will agree it is a little bland and boring in terms of the content within the world. But I just really want to separate these points because I feel like it's fair.
At least in Path of Exile, with all the different systems that it has, there's meaningful ways to progress your character, whether that's through the labyrinth, being able to access a more specialized tree of skills and abilities and things that you can use later, or maybe it's some of the other endgame systems that have specific items that you can only get from doing those activities. There's something to that makes you want to keep coming back to it, that makes you want to learn more about it. But there's nothing to learn in Diablo. It's just go kill stuff. Hopefully you get a higher number. Okay, you got higher number. Good job. Maybe you can beat Lilith now.
And even the higher number thing goes to items too, which is that you will go from one item to another item with exactly the same stats, and the only change is you got like 0.5% increase of crit chance or something. I I don't think I've ever had in my entire time of playing PoE, which again, it's a comparison we're using, but you don't have to compare them, is that in PoE, I've never had the experience of replacing one item with another exact same item, unless it was like a legendary unique drop. But the items it will be better, but better for a completely different reason than the item I was replacing very often. So that is another thing I'm noticing, unless we're talking resistances, etc. But for the most bit, the items do actually change a lot, at least in the beginning. I haven't got to the super ultra min-max expensive builds yet. Maybe it's similar, but where I'm at.
There's just nothing to it. And while I realize that this game is supposed to be for a much more simpler audience, for people that aren't looking for something ultra complex, that doesn't mean it shouldn't have meaning. And for me, Diablo 4 doesn't have meaning. All in all, I expect more from the company that created the genre, from the company that made the game that inspired all of its competition, with some odd over 9,000 people that worked on the game over its creation, as well as all the money that they invested. I would expect an improvement over previous iterations and innovations within the genre. So when that same company is coming at me asking for $50 to $100 for an expansion of a game that didn't meet mine or many other players' expectations, that still has a long ways to go to improve, I mean, we still don't even have stash tabs. Loot filters don't exist. The overworld endgame still lacks really any meaningful purpose. Personally, I feel that loot and builds need to be a little bit more interesting, and
it's not just him. Everyone feels this way. That's why itemization coming season 4 will be a very big talking point and one that we're all interested in. However, in that same vein, it is so far away and it is such an important piece of the puzzle that it feels discouraging. And that's why you're seeing people play other things at the moment. So he's right on the money here.
Game still lacks that something intangible that really wants to drive you to play it. Now, again, they definitely have improved the game since Season 2, and Season 3 can take it even further. But regardless of the improvements that they make in a year, for me personally, and I would hope for many others, that's not enough for me to justify buying the game all over again. Am I to believe that in tandem, when developing Diablo 4, they have developed a second Diablo 4 to layer over on top of it? Or they developed a second Diablo 4 in less time than it took them to make the base game? These are MMO expansion prices or higher. And for me, that's way too much, too early.
Just to be fair, he's referring to the survey pricing we all saw in the Beliar video, in which it can go upwards of $100. That's why you always see the title like $100 expansion, etc. It's because that the survey had the pricing up to there. They included other things, much like, you know, the digital deluxe or whatever when the original Diablo 4 came out. There were options that were significantly cheaper, and all of the pay-to-win stuff, etc., that was in those surveys, they have openly pushed back about. So just to be fair on where we're at the pricing, there is no official announcement on this pricing yet. We're all talking about surveys still.
For too little work. But that's just for me, and it could be different for you. And what I say in these videos are just my view of what I think about the game and what I think about the industry. That doesn't necessarily mean that that is your opinion or it needs to be everybody else's. But I do hope that having discussions like these do help people try to make smarter purchasing decisions in the future. Be a little bit more patient. Hold out a little bit longer because we're going to get better games as a result. Opening our wallets to that much money so quickly doesn't make a lot of sense to me. That's the whole reason I made the video in the first place.
Which is fair. It's very similar to the talking point I had done earlier, saying that the expansion isn't something I'd be wanting to spend money on unless the base game's completed. I've said this many times. He seems interested in having a conversation. Maybe I'll reach out and see, well, maybe you'll see this video. If you have any interest in doing a duo discussion collab talk, you seem like you would be a fun guy to have a chat with, so let me know if that's something you'd be interested in.
Not saying that the game is doomed. Not saying that the game has no chance at all for survival, though it does look relatively bleak. If you watch any of the trailers for Path of Exile 2, you cannot tell me that that game doesn't look like a massive innovation over the genre. It looks incredible.
There's Diablo 4 is going to have a rough 2024 because they have to deliver upon Season 3 leaderboards actually having content to make people want to play Season 3 because itemization is not coming Season 4. So they have to deliver a Season 3 that people are actually going to want to play, which in my opinion is going to be hard to do. Okay, and then they have Season 4 where they have to deliver itemization changes. Then directly following the itemization changes, You're competing with like Last Epoch launches. You're competing with Path of Exile 2 beta going into it, etc. It's going to be a difficult 2024 for ARPG creators and a great one for ARPG players and enjoyers, because there's going to be a variety of options, fresh options basically coming to the genre.
Look, I started this channel mostly about Diablo 4, and I pivoted away from that mostly because I didn't like the game. And I just don't like making a ton of content about games that I'm not enjoying. And I'm not going to continue to pretend like I do or whatever else just to get views or something like that. No, the idea is for me to be as genuine as I possibly can with these discussions, with these videos that I make. And that's what I'm doing right now. So I realize that there's people that are out there that want me to look at the game in a different light. And I realize that there's fanboys that are going to be fervent and zealous in every take that they can have. But this is mine. So I respect yours. You respect mine. Or neither of us respect one another because it's the internet. So whatever.
That was a pretty good video. Shout out to Legendary Drops here as well. He's got just about 1 minute left of this video, so let's see what he's got to say to wrap it up. I'm going to hit subscribe and like. I'll have a link down below. You can watch it too. Let's see his last thoughts and comments, and I'm going to wrap up with my own.
But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Big shout out and thanks to Asmongold, Riker, and also Darth Microtransactions for checking out the video and watching it on their streams. No problem. Really cool. Really appreciate it. I got a bunch of comments and sentiments about people that were like super against folks reacting to people's content. I'm just going to say it right here so anybody knows. I love it. It's great. For a smaller channel, it's awesome exposure.
There we go.
And these are also guys that I've watched for years now. Asmongold, I honestly don't even know how long I've been watching him for. It's far too long. So anytime I get to see their takes and their opinions, you know, contrasted with my own, it's awesome because it gives me the opportunity to maybe sometimes sit back and think about the way that I'm thinking about things, maybe approach my content in a different way. And I always appreciate that kind of feedback. And I also appreciate their communities because I'm a part of them. So, yeah. Thanks for watching.
Well, that's a very sweet comment at the end.
Just stay safe. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace. Oh, one more thing before you go.
You got me.
We just hit 30,000 subscribers on this channel in the first year of it being
31. He's climbing.
That is crazy. You guys are crazy. Thank you guys for everything, and I cannot wait to make videos in 2024.
That was a pretty good video. The link's down below. I'd go give him a like and a subscribe. He's been making some bangers lately. I do want to say one point, which is that I don't believe currently that if you're playing Diablo 4 and enjoying it, you're wrong. I just want to say that I want at the end, I kind of mentioned it, alluded to it a little bit in the middle. I've noticed there's people that still play D4 that still enjoy it. That's perfectly fine. And you don't have to feel the need to, like, if you're not playing PoE, you're stupid or something. I don't want people to get that vibe. I know there's a lot of us Diablo 4 players have been going to Path of Exile lately and really preaching the love for the game because it has a lot good going for it. But if you are happy just playing Diablo 4, that's fine. I want to address that point one time too, because I've seen comments even in my own videos where I talk about Path of Exile and all that, where people be like, man, I'm bummed out that people are, you know, wishing Diablo 4 is more. I'm having a great time. And if you are having a great time, good. I'm happy for you. I'd actually also be interested in Legendary Drops. If you see this video, dude, you like the react, so here's another one for you. And if you are interested, come on the channel. Let's talk about PoE and let's talk about Diablo 4, just for the fun of it. I feel like we have very similar opinions on this stuff. Okay, that's about it. Go give the guys some love. I'll see you on the next video.